Media Day has come and gone for the 2024-25 Indiana Pacers. We got injury updates. We heard how the Pacers think they can be better on defense. We heard lots of guys talk about roles. We heard about size. We heard about banana bread. We heard that TJ McConnell is actually like 50 years old. And we'll talk about it all with Tyler Smith today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today it's Tuesday, it's October, and it's the official start of the Pacers 2024-25 season. Welcome back, expectations into your life. Welcome back, the Pacers into your life. Media Day was Monday. We heard from all the starters, most of the bench players, and Rick Carlisle, and we learned a lot about how the team hopes to be better with a largely similar roster, about what they think they can do to be better on defense, on what certain guys picked up and learned in the offseason, either mentally or from a skill perspective, and so much more goofy stuff that comes with Media Day. And we'll break it all down, the noteworthy stuff today with Tyler Smith, who sat right next to me for all of it. I love getting other people's perspective on these. Tyler, of course, was great on the show and asking questions in the room there as well. So let's get into all of it, what we learned from Media Day on today's Locked On Pacers. Let's go. It's over. Media Day done. We heard from the many Pacers players. We saw Tyrese Haliburton's wonderful shoes. We got some injury updates, good and bad. And we learned a lot about banana bread. Lots of important and unimportant topics from day one of Pacers Media Day. And the guy sitting to my left the entire day, who watched me read quotes from other media days and sweat that the Mets might do this. I hate the Braves. This would be a great day. It's Tyler Smith. Tyler, how are you? Did you enjoy your morning getting back in the Pacers swing of things?
I did. It's crazy that it's already here.
Yes.
But, this was my 9th or 10th Pacers Media Day, and it's always an exciting time, just a refresher, just a clean slate. A new season is upon us, so that's always exciting for fans and media alike.
It did make me laugh that some of the players were like, yeah, last year it felt like we were apart for so long, and this year it was like, oh, we're back together already, the same group of guys and no time off. It's just how it is, and part of a big theme of the day to me, and something that was asked about with a lot of players, is what is better? How does this team be better after bringing back largely the same team? And I think we got variations of the same answer from just about every person who answered that question, which was interesting to me. One guy I really wanted to hear from was TJ McConnell, because he was with the Pacers the bubble year and the following year when they had a lot of continuity, but they were older, right? And so, it made some, they couldn't really do anything else because the cap didn't go up, but they couldn't really do anything else. So they had the same kind of team 2 years in a row, and it didn't work out very well for them. This year's team's a lot younger. TJ thinks this time, right, they have the deeper playoff experience, which of course helps with continuity, and having the same system, which I think he's the first guy to reveal they'd have the same systems on both ends, will help with their continuity. And then Myles similarly, shared his thoughts about that. He was with those teams too. But what to you stood out about the way that everybody kind of thought this team can be better despite at least 12, maybe 13 guys from last year being back?
Well, I think one thing that's underrated is when a team runs it back. A lot of times fans don't like it because they want these flashy moves. They want new additions. Obviously, you've got Siakam for the full year. You've got some guys that battled injuries and all that stuff. But McConnell noted how they're going to have a head start on a lot of teams, because a lot of teams do have a lot of roster turnover. So that's going to be important. But I think it's one thing that I took away from Media Day was it's a very self-aware team. It's a very focused team. They understand that it's going to happen on the defensive end if they're going to take that next leap. And so that's good to hear. I think actually the two words that were repeated the most throughout the day was defense and fluke. They want to make sure that everyone, they're very aware of the outside noise as well. People thinking last year was a fluke, and they're out to prove everybody wrong, and that's good to have a chip on their shoulder. But Carlisle from the opening interview talked about if we're going to make any leap, it's going to be on the defensive end, and they noted 18th from Christmas on in defense last year. They've got the ability to make that higher, or take a step, and that's going to be important for them.
Yeah, every athlete looks for that thing to motivate them, right? That's why that was my lead question for Tyrese after the injury stuff was like, hey, what's that going to be for you and really this team? Because last year it was more obvious, and like he specifically got paid a bunch of money and made an All-NBA team and won a gold medal this summer. And he's like, well, people don't really believe in the run we had last year because these teams were injured. And sometimes when star players talk about like nobody believed in us, you're like, shut up. Like everybody believed in your team. But this time he's right. Like everybody is saying this about the Pacers and using the fluke word that you mentioned. And to be clear, like I get why people are saying that. I don't think anyone's crazy to say that. But I think that for once, a team coming off of a conference finals run doesn't have to like manufacture crap to really motivate themselves to be good. And we've heard that from, all the leaders and speakers. I don't know, Tyler, how much of the Pascal Siakam minicamp videos you've dove in and watched, but every speech is some iteration of their best players saying, hey, we got to work harder and be better. And people don't think we can do it again. But they all seem to think and they're probably right. They just did it, that they can again. They just know it'll take specifically in a lot of cases, growth from some young guys, which we'll get to in a second, and defensive improvement, which was, yes, like you said, a theme for every single player's portion up there.
Yeah. And I actually like how Siakam started talking about that in his exit interview, even before he signed the extension. He said, we have the ability to get back to this point, but it is an absolute process. It takes time. He knows how hard the work that they have to put in to get to that point. So even before he signed, he's like, hey, we're going to have to, from day one, continue to have that chip on our shoulder and understand it's a long, long season. You got training camp, preseason, 82 games, multiple rounds to get back to that place. And Tyrese noted how balanced the East is from 2 to 8. Everybody's chasing Boston. Everybody's bunched up in the standings last year. Other teams got better. So a lot of work ahead, but it's nice for fans to know that at least this team coming into camp has an opportunity to do something special.
Yeah. Also, look, there's a 2% at most chance that Tyrese Haliburton is listening to this podcast. But Tyrese Haliburton said, hey, the East last year, 2 through 8, was 4 games apart. And then he said, right? Because he wanted clarity. And I held up 3 fingers because I thought the Heat won 47 games. He said, 3. He was right. It was 4. The Heat won 46 games. So that's my bad. Hopefully no one actually cares about that. But I'll think about it for the rest of my life. So that's good. But I think thematically, the thing that was most interesting to me in the defensive talks is they, like in the past, you were there last year. Like we heard like layered different answers from different guys on how the team would get better on defense. Some guys last year said it was about guarding the yard, and some guys said, "Oh, this new scheme will help us." And some guys said, "Oh, we have Bruce Brown now. This is great." This year, I mean, there were like variations, I guess, but it was mostly the same kind of deal, right? It was, we want to stop corner threes, we want to cut off drives, and we want to, and most everybody said this, we have to rebound better at every position, right? We all know this stuff. Like this is a continuation of the things that they stress from their ex interview, but at least it sounds like largely their scheme will be similar. Maybe they're a little bit more willing to give up some above the break threes in exchange to cut off the rim a little better. That's at least the only hint I got. But outside of Aaron Nesmith really leaning into the whole accountability part of it, which I think was also about the fact that they have most of the team together, it seemed like all of what they believe about being a better defensive team is just being better on the defensive end of the floor, executing the scheme they want better, doing what they did, like you said, after the break last year when they were 18th, and doing that for as long of, if not a whole season. They have this personnel to do it. Rick Carlisle talked about the size at their positions being helpful. But I truly think that if you were curious how the Pacers think they'll be better, I think that's the thing they tip the most, is that they believe they can go from bad to just a little below average on the defensive end by being better at those various things.
Yeah, and that's all that it would take with an offense as elite as this one. You would think they would be up there as well offensively. So if they're even average on the defensive end, they can do some things. And Aaron Nesmith mentioned as well that the changes they made around Christmas time in the second half of the year took a little time to adjust. And he said that's a benefit of coming into camp, kind of knowing what we're doing already, and just building off of that. And a handful of guys said, we're going to throw a few new things in here and there, but largely it's about doing what we do and continuing to do it better. And, that's important to have that continuity. And, Siakam mentioned the communication's got to continue to improve. Carlisle mentioned that in all 17 of their playoff games, it was the team that was most physical that won that night, whether it was them or the opponent. And so that's a good message to send across for his team as well, to be the one that's leading the way in physicality and rebounding. And if they do that, they're going to have a shot most nights.
Yeah. And like that's his message for Jarris, right? Physicality, defense, rebounding, you'll get on the floor. That's what this team needs. And if you can provide it, you're going to play and potentially help the Pacers win. And the last kind of thing on growth from last year, since it is such a similar team that Rick talked about that at least made me perk up is, that he didn't say competing goals, but just like the development versus winning part of what they've been doing for all this time and how that's going to be baked into this season is they have guys that they've developed in-house, like on the team already. And so the continued development in their cases, and a little bit so with Wiseman, who we will unfortunately have to talk about again in a couple seconds, will be a fascinating part of this. Can they keep developing guys like they've been so good at on the defensive end? Can that apply even more to the growth and skills of this team? Because that's been their superpower in this era is as they've gotten better as a team through their development, they've been able to win and develop at the same time. And basically everyone they've snagged from another team to try to give a bigger role has been much better. That's hard. If teams could do that, they would do it all the time. The Pacers have been great at it. James Wiseman's the guy they're trying to do it with. Tyler, that's the only bad news we got all day, right? Groin injury for James Wiseman. Did I miss any bad news? Besides that TJ McConnell is apparently like 60 years old now.
I think that was it, which is honestly a breath of fresh air. There's, a lot of years where it's like, oh, we got a bunch of guys, banged up and guys are going to be slowed through camp and maybe miss a few preseason games and see where they're at. As of right now, that's the only news that we heard of somebody that's a little bit slow going here, but there's a little time. And, you mentioned the success that the organization has had bringing guys in. That's why, to me, it's still I kind of laugh when fans will make comments to acquisitions like that and wonder why it was made when it's obviously there's a spot open with Smith gone and they've had success doing that before. So let's see how he fits with this group. And Carlisle said today that he's not used to this kind of pace, but they believe he's got the skill to fit in and slot in nicely in that slot.
Hey, everybody, quick little break here as we can talk about the good folks over at FanDuel. NFL fans, Colts fans, they're 2-2. That's great. You can start the NFL season off with a big return over on FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. When you get that hunch in the middle of a game, whatever it may be, the best way to act on it is checking out the latest stats and viewing live play-by-play on whatever you want to watch or check in on, and so much more. And that's all on the same page where you place those bets when you have that hunch on FanDuel. The most convenient way to get all that information in one place. Plus, if you want to get started on FanDuel, get the ball rolling, you will get started with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed $200, guaranteed of bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. That's on FanDuel. Check them out today. I saw him in the hallways later on after, and I knew this because I interviewed him at Summer League, but he is one of the maybe 5 guys in the NBA because you used to it next to these guys, and even when they're 7 feet tall, you get used to it. But there's a few guys still that you just go like, whoa, James Wiseman is a whoa kind of dude. He's just very muscular at large. He's a groin injury, to be clear, Carlisle said. So I think he'll be able to do, it didn't sound like he's like totally out, but I don't think he can do everything is what it sounds like. So we'll see what that actually looks like, what it matters. But like, in past years, it's like, oh, Andrew Nemhard has kidney stones. Karis LeVert's back. He's going to miss the first 4 games of the season. Maybe that happens throughout camp or preseason, but a good start. And the other side of that is Mathurin's good to go. He said he has been for a month and a half, which is a pretty long time. Good for him. Yeah, we've seen the videos of him playing in the Pacers mini camp. He looks great. That's obviously important for him to get the ball rolling. It's a big year for him. And Haliburton, of course, good to go too. Still no idea what actually was hurt during the Olympics, but he says he's good to go. So I suppose I'll stop pressing for that for now. Oh, we have lost Tyler, so I will just keep rambling until he returns. Yeah, I asked Ty about his injury. He wasn't, didn't get into specifics, did say, yeah, good to go now, has recovered, no problems there. So that's good. Pacers will obviously be happy with that and where they're headed now as Tyler has returned. Don't worry, I kept talking about injuries, so you're good to go. But that was the other key thing and new stuff is when it comes to injuries. Tyler, what did you think of this? I thought this was cool and something I asked a couple guys about. We heard about the team going to Chad Buchanan's house, which is a thing that happens before the season, I think every year for a night or a dinner or something, and some key speeches from Siakam, Turner, Nemhard, Haliburton, and McConnell. What did you make of that, and what we learned more about what those guys said specifically?
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it just shows the culture of this group and how, they're approaching this season. Like, to them, this is not just another year where they're going through the motions. Several guys are in different scenarios than last year because they got locked up with extensions, but it's largely, again, the same group, guys that believe in each other. Siakam, as it's been documented that he's taken more of a leadership role and was kind of forced into that last year. So taking guys under his wing, but also, stepping up at Chad's place and delivering that. I think they said also Mathurin spoke and talked about what he learned in the time that he was out. And that was that piqued my interest as one of the main takeaways from that example, for him to kind of boldly get up and say, here's the things that I learned just watching, and it stunk to not be part of it, but I learned a lot in those times. So, and it's a good thing to have so many guys, whether they were forced into that to speak or not, to have that before the season, just to get everybody on the same page is a good thing.
Yeah, and I think they all have a different perspective to add that really matters to the current context of the Pacers team, right? Tyrese and Nembhard were talking a lot about the Olympics, but like Tyrese had to sit and watch and be on the bench and like learn a new perspective about that reality of being a basketball player. And he said that was extremely motivating for him anyway, but also relevant to what he wants to apply to this team this year. And of course, he is a big time leader there. And then Andrew Nembhard also talked about that kind of stuff. For some reason, I can't find my Andrew Nembhard note. There it is. But he learned a lot about things he wants to apply to the Pacers that went poorly with Canada, that he thinks, okay, I need to avoid those pitfalls. TJ McConnell, I think, though, Mathurin and McConnell were the two, at least, that resonated most with me as like will be relevant to this year's team. Mathurin's, you already mentioned, we'll get back to that in a second. McConnell's was about that he started last year out of the rotation and how he kind of navigated through the day-to-day of what that felt like, how he had to be supportive, and then how he applied that to when he did play, how he played. And then in the end, he became indispensable and they like couldn't afford to not play him. Mm-hmm. And that matters again, because this team is deep, right? There will be, at least for sure, Jarris Walker, well, maybe someone else, but someone for sure, and maybe even James Wiseman, and maybe even someone else, if they pop, will be like, hey, I should be playing, and I'm not. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, is going to really matter for this deep team where contracts and the human element are such a factor. And yeah, Mathurin, I don't know when it clicked between him being out for the stretch run last year or the playoffs or whatever, but I think he's got it now where he realizes it's about fit, and like he saw the team do well without him, and so he needs to blend into that specific style. And so both of those two stood out to me the most about those speeches of what it means for the team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The two Bens may be fighting for playing time. They of course they could both be in the rotation, but I thought it was interesting that Carlisle mentioned when Mathurin was out, he had a chance to watch Ben Shepherd.
Yeah,
with the speed that he played, the spacing, the attention to defense. And so he's talking to this lottery pick about, hey, watch what our rookie did last year. And I thought that was interesting. So, it's there's no guarantee there, but the competition is a good thing as well. Guys fighting for minutes, and as you know, injuries will happen, so guys will get their opportunity. But that's my big thing is Walker going to play some backup three? Is it going to be the Bens? Is one of them going to come up, not be in the rotation when everyone's healthy? But that McConnell example, and Carlisle mentioned it as well, how important that is for any guy in the future as well that's currently not playing to stay ready.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about guys being that supportive vet for Jarris, telling him his time's coming. And Carlisle did say his path to more minutes. We already talked about the physicality, defense, rebounding part of it, but he had a good summer, and it just stinks that he was on a team with all these vets that then traded for one at his position in Siakam, which is part of why they're going through this position change. So I suspect Ben Shepherd will be the backup three to start the season, but Carlisle also said something that I've said a bajillion times this summer. No team has ever made it through with no one getting hurt, right? Jarris is going to have many more opportunities to play this year than last year just because of that. And then if he's much better and actually earns time, then he'll play even more. And it won't matter if guys are hurt. He'll just be playing. But that was an important note, even though we didn't hear from Jarris today. I'm sure that will come Tuesday or Wednesday, if I had to guess. I don't really know anything. I'm just going to rifle through some stuff that I thought was interesting and ask you about it, Tyler. 1, Myles Turner, strong, 7 pounds of muscle. He said 260. Some of that, and primarily that, he said, is for rebounding purposes, helping himself and the team be better on the defensive end as they try to improve on that end. What did you think of that? Because the speed element of his game matters, but if it's just adding muscle, I don't know that would slow him down. And if it makes him better at the thing the Pacers really need, that's really important.
Yeah, I think he's a smart guy as well. I don't think he would, bulk up too much where the other parts of his game would suffer. He had obviously an amazing year last year, and staying healthy was huge for him. I think we can expect more of the same. Honestly, if he's even averaging another rebound or two, it's going to be big for this team, especially in certain matchups. As you know, and what a lot of fans don't like to talk about is a lot of times he's doing his job, boxing out, and somebody else grabs the board.
Yep.
So it's, he's a lot better in that area than what, some give him credit for. But if this team has this kind of, this theme of something they got to improve on, and he's buying into that, that's great. He's the vet here. He's the guy that, he said he's always on 1-year contracts here in Indiana, which is wild because he's here for 10 years. But yeah, he's got a good mindset, and I thought he was laser focused in his responses today.
Yeah, I agree. He had a different, not in a bad way, but just like a different demeanor than everybody else in terms of that kind of thing. First of all, like every year since Sabonis, they've had a better rebound rate with him on the floor than off as a team. That doesn't mean there's some he couldn't get that, or that they would like him to get that he didn't. But I think that is relevant that he does sometimes not get credit for those. Although there are times he also takes himself out by going for a block or just gets beat by a center. The other thing he talked about was his future fun. I mean, it's going to be weird because that will be a question all season, but there's nothing that can be done. Like, he can't be extended. So it feels like it should just be like this back pocket. Like we have the quotes, let's wait till February and reassess at the trade deadline, but it's going to matter all year, right? So their most important outstanding item is their starting five. Every other position, they have their starter locked up for at least 3 seasons. But yes, he joked that every year in Indiana felt like a contract year. Hopefully last year didn't feel like a contract year to him, because that would be concerning, because he had 2 years left and was playing very well and had no chance of being moved. So, there's not really anything to add there, but he didn't say anything that made it seem like he would be rushing to leave or anything. I thought it was cool. He brought the other bigs to Dallas with him, Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, to work with them. And he said he wants them to be under his tutelage, and stressed how it's possible to have a lot of success in this Indiana system. Talk about Ben Mathurin, because he said something in particular that stood out to me. He said he's improved mentally, and we touched on that. He's kind of assessed this fit part of his game. What do you think of what he said about the season ahead for him in terms of the expectations, or lack thereof in his case, for his role, and what he got out of Canada and how that could help him in a very important third year?
Yeah, I think he said some interesting things, and I feel like he kind of fits what a lot of guys, not saying the minutes, the rotation and all that, their expected role, but as far as like having a chip on your shoulder and coming into the season with something to prove, he's been that way his whole, high school, college, all the way up through the pros. And so it's kind of like he and Jarris Walker are kind of like in the back pocket of the Pacers. They had this great run. They still got these two guys where, to me, if even one of the two, bust out and give good minutes, that's going to be a huge addition to the team. But we've heard from the front office, we've heard from Carlisle as well, that he's talking more, that he's asking even more questions, and feel like that was even something he did a little bit beforehand, because he wants, he's a gym rat. He wants to learn. But now he's doing that even more, and he doesn't, the things that he learned by watching, as he said himself, it's got to be big for his game. So hopefully for him, he gets off to a good start and doesn't have anything kind of, lingering thoughts or questions about his fit. And if he can carve out a role pretty early on, or whenever that moment comes when someone's out and he carves a good role, that's going to be big for him and for the rotation.
The word I typed in all caps that he said was, when he was out and they were succeeding, he said it was humbling. I thought that was very revealing, right? And I talked about this. I don't expect that this will be the path that this goes down, but the Miami Heat now live in this reality where they've had their best run, well, one of their 2 awesome runs, with Tyler Hero just not playing at all. And it's totally changed the perception of Tyler Hero. Now, it was well into Tyler Hero's career, and Ben Mathurin's played for 1.5 seasons because he got hurt. So obviously much different situations, but like that can matter to a team psyche and how players perceived. I think he was like, man, they're really good without me. This sucks. I got to figure it out. And I think that he is going to. He's very good in that way. Pascal, we already talked about the leadership stuff. I think that's pretty noteworthy because it's not something he ever had to do in Toronto. Did he say anything that really jumped out to you, or was it all besides him taking a photo of us? I hope I get to see that. That was very funny.
Yeah, he said he's going to develop those in the coming day or two. So we'll see if
I have to imagine that's the least important one for him, right?
Probably
the smiling media contingent.
Yeah.
Oh, we also skipped a Ben Mathurin thing. He made Tyrese Haliburton some banana bread, which sounds delicious, and Tyrese called it an 8 out of 10. Which I don't know how much of a grader Tyrese Haliburton is, but I've had a Ben Mathurin cupcake. It was very good. So I want to try the banana bread now. He needs a menu.
Yeah, we should work on that. Mathurin menu would sell like crazy.
If they can't have Turner's block, the Mathurin menu could be their new fan section, I suppose. Tyrese Haliburton, the other thing he said that I have highlighted that we haven't talked about yet, he talked about defense for him, and obviously he needs to be a better on-ball defender, but he said something that I have to put my hand up because I say this all the time. Like, I think of him as a good team defender because he's very smart and he knows where he's supposed to be and things like that. He gets a lot of in the passing lane steals. He said, watching back film last year, he felt like he was out of position a lot, and he didn't have a strength as a team defender either. So he believes part of his own defensive growth is getting better in that way. Obviously, everybody can stand to get somewhat better at both, but I thought that was very interesting because I've always viewed the opposite of that. I think that's good for him, and man, is he motivated by that Team USA benching. Like, obviously, I think he understands he was among the worst players on that team, but he did not like that. He did not like that.
Yeah. Yeah, when I mentioned that it's a very self-aware team, that starts at the top. And the fact that Haliburton basically says, I feel like I have a high IQ of this game, but then I watch film and I think, what was I doing in that scenario, in that possession? So to have your leader with that, acknowledgement of his own limitations. And then, he mentioned talking about, his relationship with Steph at the Olympics and saying like, hey, we're similar players in that we have some limitations defensively, but he's smiling while he says it, but that's a good thing for your team leader to have that and understand it. So I think they're going to be not only gym rats, but they're going to be watching a lot of film and they're going to do whatever they can to improve in that area. It starts at the top, and that's another good sign for fans to hear.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've said this for years, and this is a funny one to hear from a Pacers podcast now because of how last season went, but something that always impressed me about the Bucks when they were at their best and when they were defending really well is like regular season, it's Bucks, Wizards, and Giannis is busting his tail on defense. And like if he's doing it, everybody's doing it, right? And so even if Tyrese isn't maybe ever going to be the best defender, like if he is locked into team defense and moving well and trying and communicating, everybody else will do those things. So the extent that actually makes them like an awesome defensive team can be debated, obviously. I still think they'll be below average, but that does matter. And I think that's always been a calling card for the Bucks is that they never look soft. Even when they stink on defense, they don't look soft. They just were all over the place last year for whatever reason. So not to take a shot at the Bucks, but I think that's extremely relevant to this kind of conversation. And so same like that happened on offense last year. Tyrese is always buzzing and flying around and getting guys open and throwing the ball, and everybody else was moving and throwing the ball and getting everybody else involved. You take that, a team takes the kind of shape of their leader and that player's attitude. I think that'll be important this year. Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell both said they love Indy when they answered the extension question. That was coming. I didn't really learn a ton from those things. As expected, those are good trade-off deals for both teams. The other thing Nembhard talked about was, we already mentioned the Canada stuff, was learning how important every possession is. And so that translates to defense and other guys getting better individually on that end of the floor. He also loved watching beach volleyball at the Olympics, but not a ton from him and Obi Toppin and Andrew Nembhard, and Aaron Nesmith, excuse me. I didn't have a ton of huge takeaways, just a lot of the like, yeah, we need to get better at these things. Here's how we do it kind of stuff.
Yeah, for Nembhard, you always expect, very straightforward, to the point answers. That's kind of like who he is and how he plays. I asked a question to Myles Turner about the importance of getting some home court just because of how good they were in last year's playoffs. Nesmith actually brought that up on his own. He said for him personally, one of his goals, for the team is to fight for home court, whether that's one round, whether that's multiple rounds. Obviously, it's important. That building is just different. And other than Boston, basically winning each game and giving Boston a run for the money, without Haliburton at home as well. So hopefully that's a motivating factor for the team to treat the regular season with maybe some more importance than some teams would after a run like they had. When they just want to get back to that point, you gotta get there first, and you gotta set yourself up in a good position.
Did anything else stand out to you that we have not covered in this conversation?
I don't think so. The biggest thing that piqued my interest was some talk about minutes, and he said there's 11 or more guys that deserve it. But the big question for me will be Jarace Walker, because Carlisle did say they want to play bigger at times. They want to play tougher.
I want to get
so
to that.
Does it come to Walker being the backup 3, or is it certain matchups? He also said he wants to see which guys are bringing it every night, and that will be an impact. So if there's a guy that impresses through training camp on both sides of the ball, then maybe they get the early nod and they'll go from there.
Yeah, I lobbed Ricka, do you have an opening statement? And in that answer, he mentioned something about him learning more last year about positional size, right? And in my head, I'm trying to go through all their positions and think, do they have anybody who feels too small for the position they play? Maybe whoever their starting 2 is, maybe whoever their backup 3 is, and then you immediately go to, oh, look at that. They have this 6'8" kid they drafted last year, right? And so if Jarace can do the stuff they want, like a lot of the principles this team has and the needs they theoretically want would go back to that, right? And so I think that will be a major topic. But it's the same as last year to me, where they're going to say, and they should, you got to earn playing time. And you can't hand it to any one guy, because then the notion of earning it falls apart everywhere else, like on the whole roster, just because someone's young. And so I get the thinking, like, hey, you pick this guy in the lottery, try to get in time. Like, you can't just do that, right? What's the point of saying earn it and try and grind and get good if you're just going to do that? So on one hand, I think that there'll be a lot more that size thing. Really, I'm going to reference that all season if Jarace is playing. I don't remember that. But I don't, I think they still have to do the whole, hey, let's see how the dust settles in camp. Can they get more size of the positions? It'll be very telling. We'll learn a lot when they start practicing.
Absolutely. Should be a fun year. Looking forward to it. A lot of good storylines, even though it's, more of the same, and some of the, most of the roster is back. There's still a lot of intriguing things to follow as we get going here.
Agreed. First practice tomorrow for you listening today. October is here. That's crazy, which means baseball and the start of basketball. The game is not over, so I can say go Mets. I've never said go Mets in my life. Today I'm saying go Mets. I would like the Diamondbacks and the Mets to make the playoffs. By the time this is out, maybe I look stupid. Tyler, thank you for the time. Where can people find you, your work, what you have to say about Media Day, and much more? Pacers and the mighty Hoosiers in football and basketball. Yes, I'm calling it. They're going to be an okay but not great basketball team.
Yeah, IndySportsLegends.com. Twitter is Tyler Smith _ISL. And a lot of Pacers coverage and some IU stuff, and who knows what else as we continue.
I always copy paste people's names into the graphic for the YouTube part of this podcast. And every time I do yours, I'm like, am I dumb? Like, I know how to spell Tyler and Smith is whatever. I'm going to get it wrong one day and be happy I always copy pasted it. Tyler, thank you for the time. A joy sitting next to you for our probably 7th overlapping Media Day. Season's here. It's time to rock. We'll be back tomorrow talking about small forwards for the Pacers season. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.